PC caucus. Mr. Rodney, would you like to share your time with the minister?
I would be happy to share the time with the minister.
Please
Yeah,
proceed.
that sounds good to me. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And the honourable member from the Wild Rose might be happy to know I'm very happy to pick up exactly where she left off. No, we did not talk about this beforehand, but referring to page 50 in my notes of the business plan outcome one, the fact that Alberta's students are successful. Now, Minister, you've got a background in education, as do I, so do many of the people around the table, but both as educators and also as an administrator. And I really appreciate the chance to have worked in many schools at many levels. And I'll tell you what I saw was that the strength of the Alberta education often was the choice that's available here. And I can remember many, many years ago where even Maclean's magazine, whatever you think of it, said, again, close to a decade ago, that the reason that the Alberta education system was so successful and by far and away the most successful in Canada was because of choice of, you know, public and separate and charter and private and home and other. And, you know, I know we just celebrated Easter, but in a certain publication, it's the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta, in their Christmas publication, there was a letter from you. And it states, these are your words, we have and will continue to support choice in education as well, whether students are learning in a bricks and mortar school or at home or under watchful eyes of their parents, and it goes on. And that's great news. So referring to page 50, Mr. Chair, that Alberta students are successful.
50 of the business plan, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's face it, integral to that is the fact that parents need to be part of this. They choose the right learning environment for their child's specific needs. So right in your opening remarks, you referred to Bill 1. You know it, people have accused you of pushing kids towards the public system with that bill, and perhaps not to separate charter, private, home, other. What's your response to that?
Well, you know, Bill 1, its title really explains the circumstance, which is it's an act to reduce school fees, right? And so, I mean, school fees, it's a pretty bumpy landscape out there, and, you know, we have more than $200 million worth of school fees being charged out, maybe even more, right, in the province. And so, in a difficult economic circumstance, I really knew that we needed to do something about reducing school fees and starting to rationalize and to review them in a systematic way. And so we built a long-term budget to start reducing school fees next year. And, you know, I just thought that we really need more time to do the second component of Bill 1, which is to start to clean up and rationalize school fees as well.
So does part 2 then, because I know you know the criticism, people would say, hey, it's great that you're helping public school kids, but how about all the kids in the other systems? Isn't it discriminatory against those in charter, private, home, other systems?
Well, it's a act to reduce school fees, right?
Yes.
And so I was looking for the way by which I could cover off with the limited funds. It was very difficult to get the $50-some million together to reduce fees to cover off the most people. And so that's the choice that I made. And, you know, I think that it helps us to open the door of discussions about how we can further reduce school fees in the future. And, you know, I'm fully, you know, supportive of trying to do that and include everybody at the table to further reduce school fees and do it in a rational way. So this was a point in time in history. It's a point in time I always remember because it's a pretty good bill, right? And you know, we as part of Bill 1, we will communicate and interact with our school partners to further reduce school fees over time.
When you say it's a pretty good bill, of course it's going to have unanimous support. I expect in the House.
Yeah.
But Minister, you're not blind to the fact that many people say that you're really taking money out of one pocket and putting it in the other, except you're keeping a whole bunch in the meantime. In other words, it's simply a shell game. And so I've heard from all sorts of parents that they're actually going to be paying for these fees for the rest of their lives through their taxes. So there's really no saving of money, and they're being bribed with their own money. What is your response to that? Because that's pretty harsh criticism.
Well, I think it comes from your mouth more than anybody else, right?
Really?
So,
Minister, I beg to disagree,
really,
and I'm quite offended by that comment. I get comments like that every day.
I'll warn all the members around decorum, including the minister, in relation to this. If we can get back to the question at hand, please.
Yeah. So what do you respond to parents who say, well, listen, it's really nice that you've got $54 million to reduce student fees, but the fact of the matter is that taxes are going through the roof, and that's how we're paying for it for the rest of our lives, and you're bribing us with our own money. How do you respond to folks who would level that claim?
Well, I mean, certainly this is not a shell game because we are paying for the reduction in school fees through very careful reductions and savings in my department that we worked very hard on, and in other places too. So, I mean, it is a way to focus where I think things are the most important, right? And so during an economic downturn, I think it's very important for us to look for ways by which to provide some relief to families. And so in the 2 previous Septembers that I have been the Minister of Education, I saw that during that month there was all kinds of school fees happening that were it became quite a difficult time for a lot of families, especially if you had more than one kid in school. And so I thought, well, what we need to do is try to reduce school fees here in the province of Alberta. And so, we worked very hard to do so, and I think that we touched on something that was very meaningful and I think will prove to be quite popular in the fall.
Well,
Minister, I know that you make difficult decisions as a government, and I think one of them is to make sure that you are trying to ease the burden and make life more affordable.
Well, and Minister, don't get me wrong, it is popular amongst a certain section of society, and some people are thinking, hey, this is a good break for me. Other people have the opinion I was telling you. But Minister, I know that you're also not deaf to certain school boards. I know that you've heard a number of school boards saying, hey, you never consulted me about this, and I have a lot of questions, and I'm not totally convinced of this. But also when it comes to schools, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, well, look, we're restricted by this bill in terms of what extra fees we can charge.
Yes.
And they're saying, look,
right.
Maybe it's unintended consequences. I don't know about you. I've always detested the term because that usually means someone hasn't done enough planning. But anyway, they're saying often it limits program choice because the community may want the school to offer a specific program, but with the ability to charge fees, the school simply can't afford it. So the question really is this, through the chair, Minister, how is the minister ensuring that there's work going on with school boards to address these concerns and ensure that schools are able to offer the best quality and broadest range of programs to meet the needs of that community they happen to be located with? Or within?
That's a good question, right? Because, I mean, it's very important to... the other ones are
Looking
okay.
forward to your good answer,
That one's
too.
a little bit even better. That's great. It's important to recognize that schools do charge fees to offer a whole universe of different programming, right? So you might have, a performance athletic school that has kids traveling around to different parts of Canada, or, you don't want to stop or reduce the opportunity for schools to do that too, right? So again, we looked long and hard for places where there was some common feature of school fee that we could reduce, right? And so I know that, and again, being very honest, right? Some school boards worked really hard to reduce their school fees before we even engaged in this enterprise. And so I realized that the equity across the province it's not going to be the same for a while, right? But as we work to rationalize school fees and still have choice available to school boards to what they charge for, that core. I don't like calling basic because it sounds like basic cable, you don't get all the channels that you want, but it's those core courses, right, that people need to graduate and to get a good education that we want to reduce school fees on in a basic way. And so, we did, we consulted with the school boards really very, very fulsomely with the Alberta School Boards Association and with the superintendents and so forth. And, I know that it does cause them some reflection as well. But I also believe that it will help them ultimately, because their reason for existing in the first place is to provide good quality education for kids and to make sure that the access is available to everybody. And so by reducing school fees, we will cover off of each of those basic mandates. And
Well, you mentioned school
so-
boards, and I'll have questions about them later, but just,
Yeah.
I'll finish off this section right here with a couple of these questions. What, I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, what the minister's doing with his department, of course, to support new charter schools along with charter schools that wish to expand their existing facilities. And here's why. So many times, I'm sure you've seen it, a new charter school comes into existence because there's a need, there's a desire, and they make everything better for the people in their community. And often these ideas are so good that they're actually adopted by public school boards. And I'm not even going to talk about a monopoly of schooling or anything like that, but I guess I hope that no one in Alberta is afraid of, I wouldn't call it competition. It's just, we don't live in a cookie cutter world. So, Minister, what are you doing to help out with new charter schools or charter schools who are hoping to expand their existing facilities or programs?
Yeah, obviously at the core that we increased funding for enrollment for all forms of schooling in the province of Alberta. So for public schools, which includes the Catholic schools, and for charter schools, and for private schools, and for homeschooling-based funding as well. So that was, a pretty solid telegraphing that we're carrying on with what, the diversity and the choice, like you say, that we do have, which is a strength in our school systems. I have, during my 2 years as a Minister of Education, extended charters for some schools as well that have come across my desk, and and we still have the mechanism in place to for people to make new charter applications for schools, and so I've had a couple of those, right, and I apply with my ministry the regulation around the starting of new charter schools, which is that it provides some innovation that is maybe not around in the existing system, and then they do work for us to try to expand innovation throughout the whole system. So
we
yeah,
would say
I've not. I don't think I've done anything that would suggest otherwise. That these charters, like I don't know, I'm thinking Westmount was one that I extended their charter, and they provide a very fulsome and interesting innovation and feedback to that helps just to improve education generally, right?
Sure,
So,
and Minister, and I guess through the chair, all these questions have been related to page 50 of the business plan, outcome 1, Alberta students are successful, and so I know you're probably tired of the question of wherever it comes from, but would you say what you just said would be another public statement about, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'd rather hear it from you, that those folks who, parents who choose to send their child, and the child wants to go to either charter or private or home or other system, that those folks shouldn't be shaking in their boots.
No, not at all.
Funding,
It's
isn't just for public or separate, that you're actually going to not only make sure that these groups survive, but they thrive, and they're not going to be shut down in any way.
No, not at all. And charters are, I know, in a pretty healthy financial position in general. We, I guess, as I just in bulletin, I have improved the 3 charters for 15-year extension terms. So that was a nice, right? The funding for enrollment was a big deal, right? Because again, it was during the financial difficulties, and I was even surprised that I was backed up by my caucus and cabinet and premier 3 times now to make sure we get full-time funding for all forms of education for increasing for enrollment, and so it's a you have to go with your strengths, and I like to see innovation and creative thinking in all forms of our education systems, and I demand that from Calgary Public as well, or as well as the charters and everybody in between.
And I'm sure it applies to all stakeholders, whether it's students or teachers or administrators or or otherwise, and that's why I'd like to move on to page 54
Yeah.
of the business plan, if we could, Minister.
Which page, sorry?
Outcome 4, Alberta has excellent teachers and school authority leaders. And for those folks beyond these walls who might happen to be tuning in today, I want to preface these comments because there's a little bit of hardboil here, Minister, not towards you in particular, but it's a tough issue that I'm going to be addressing here. I think we all know, and this isn't just lip service. I've worked with some of these people, some of the best educators in Canada. They've been recognized nationally and beyond. Mm-hmm. They have great intentions coming to work every day. They've been involved with incredible professional development, not just getting their degree or degrees, but as they continue on through their teaching years. But let's face it, there are thousands and thousands of Albertans who are employed as educators, mm-hmm. and some struggle for one reason or another. So this is with the best interest of the child in mind. Can you tell us about the retraining process for any teachers who've been identified as needing improvement? Has there been any amelioration of that situation in that? Because let's face it, it's one thing to receive your evaluation that says needs improvement, this or that or the other. What's actually happening so that we can help these educators help our kids more, quicker, better?
Yeah, no, we always have to make sure that we're not just hoping that people engage in professional development, but we compel them to do so. Mm-hmm. And, I believe that this new teacher quality standard and principal and superintendent quality standard is going to really start to formalize that in our schools and across our post-secondary institutions too, right? I mean, it's setting standards and expectations for professional development in a more formalized sort of way. So, I mean, we're going to be able to quantify that, if that's what you're suggesting. If we look at our 42,000 teachers.
I'm encouraging you and applying and supporting you in that. And as you know, the terminology, I don't refer to myself as shadow minister or critic. I'm an advocate. I think we're doing the same thing together. We want what's best for actually the teacher themselves as well as the student. But so along those lines, though, could you give us the number of teachers within the public and Catholic school systems who've had the unfortunate circumstance of having their contract terminated within the last year because of a problem with teaching? Perhaps their ability to teach was deemed inadequate, and the number of teachers also whose contracts were terminated for professional misconduct.
Yeah, I'll be glad to get that for you. I don't have it handy.
You don't have it handy? Okay. No. Well, we'll move on to the next one. I look forward to that response. Now, our new president of the ATA is hoping the organization will have the ability to grant and revoke certification for teachers. And that would obviously consolidate greater control within the ATA. So can you tell Albertans, have you been approached on this issue, and what do you think of the request? Will you be supporting it?
No, I haven't, save for that one article that I saw in the paper, just like the one you read, probably. Yeah. I've had no informal engagement with the ATA on this matter, and we always work closely with them on some of these things, but I mean, it's important for the province to have some position on certification and so forth too, right? So I mean, we've had no thoughts about this that we would consider doing that, right? I mean, I'm not sure what the ATA has in mind, but they have not approached me in this regard, and nor am I considering anything in that regard.
Okay, no problem. And again, Chair, these set of questions, kind of grouped them. This has to do with outcome 4.
Sure.
Next question then, Minister. In conjunction with our respective teaching programs at post-secondary institutions across Alberta, what's the ministry doing to attract and retain younger teachers within rural school boards? Because let's face it, we probably both know many young graduates who struggle on a substitute list for years before getting a permanent placement in Edmonton or Calgary or other urban places, when there are generally opportunities available in rural areas. And maybe I'll further ask this question in the same vein: is attraction and retention of teachers meeting your expectations?
I mean, I see it, as a teacher myself, right? And going back, and one of the big concerns that I have, it's totally anecdotal, is, you have very excellent young teachers in the system now. I mean, something's definitely,
It is,
the
isn't it?
standard has gone up for sure.
Yeah.
But those same teachers, considering not, after 5 years, not sticking around, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's just a huge, it points to a huge problem.
My apologies
So-
for interrupting.
That was my next question about
The,
5, 10, and 20 years. We'll get back to that
Yeah,
later.
sure, no,
Thank you,
we
Minister.
can loop it around. And
Yeah, unless
thank you
Amy
for your,
wants to offer some time.
yeah. Thank
Well,
you for your,
right now it's